topics.
Mike, let's bring in a gentleman who, for purposes of full disclosure, has given political advice to both you and me through the years. He joins us as Newsmax TV's political analyst, Skyping in tonight, Dick Morris. Dick, as you watched tonight's debate, what's your overall reaction to what you saw?
Well, I would love to have seen Mike Huckabee up there, I'll tell you that. But
yeah, me too.
Yeah. In terms of the debate, I thought that this was a real turning point for Donald Trump. I think that the country really got exposed to him and saw that it's basically slogans, that it's the same stuff over and over again. I thought on Obamacare, it was very clear that the lines around the states, he didn't even seem to know what that meant. He didn't even seem to know what that was. The negotiator position, the neutrality on Israel, I thought that was terrible. You can't have a moral equivalency between these two. It's like negotiating between the cops and the robbers. I think that in a positive frame, I think Rubio did very well. I think he was the winner. I think that Cruz was close on Rubio's heels. I thought on the discussions about religious liberty in the Supreme Court, Cruz was better. I thought on the discussions of Israel, Cruz was better. I thought that Rubio was much clearer on immigration, and I think the exchanges when he mixed it up directly with Donald were particularly good, especially on the Obamacare answer. Cruz, I think, did very well when he mixed it up over the tax returns and that range of issues. I thought Kasich was superb. I think that he really was great. The problem with Kasich is that he will not get a single vote on Super Tuesday in a single state, because every one of these states, almost everyone, he'll get a few, but almost every state has a 15 or 20% threshold above which you have to be to get delegates. And he's not going to be above 20% any place. So he could run relatively well, but neither he nor Carson is going to have a single delegate from Super Tuesday, and I think they'll have to be out of the race shortly after that. Kasich will probably hang on until Ohio so he can increase his bargaining leverage at the convention.
Yeah, you make that point, and this goes back to something you said earlier, Mike. You said that John really did a good job. In retrospect, should Governor Kasich have engaged in some sort of criticism of Trump, or was it better for him to have the, quote, adult lane, the non-confrontational lane, all to himself, Mike?
No, I think he played it exactly right because he was being true to himself. If John Kasich had gone in and tried to pretend that he was going to throw punches like Marco and Ted were, it would have been out of character for him. That's not who he is. It's not his style. And I think it would have looked phony and prepared and stilted and staged. And nothing is a bigger turnoff than for someone to go on that debate stage and to be a phony. And so I think he did exactly what he needed to do. If people are looking for an alternative to what they saw in kind of the free-for-all, the fist of flying, all right, John Kasich is the guy they can turn to. I'm not sure how many of them will, because we're getting awfully close to people being settled. But I agree, and I think Dick and I tend to agree on these issues. And by the way, nobody knows this stuff better than Dick Morris. He's he's a great teacher, a great mentor, and you and I both know that from having worked with him.
And sometimes he was criticized for working with people from both sides of the aisle. Imagine that. Let's bring in another voice, a Newsmax voice from Newsmax New York, the host of the eponymously named Steve Malzberg Show. Steve, it's good to have you. And as you watch tonight, your snapshot analysis of what you saw.
Well, I kind of agree with most of what has been said. I want to say hello to you, JD, and also my friend Governor Huckabee and Dick Morris. I think it was a very, very strong performance by Marco Rubio. I mean, the question going in was, would Rubio and Cruz stop going after each other? And would Rubio and Cruz realize they have to go after Trump? And boy, from the get-go, Marco Rubio made it clear he was prepared to go after Trump, and he did it. He did it very well. He had a lot of good lines, but most of all, I thought he just, he has the facts at his fingertips and he presents them well, especially when it came to Israel. I am very tired of Donald Trump, quite honestly, saying that he's not taking sides. He's a negotiator. I think I can make a deal. It'll be the hardest deal ever, but I can make a deal. And then Rubio correctly pointed out, these are people who teach their kids from 4 years old to kill the Jew. What kind of deal are you going to make? And who cares about a deal? So I think Donald, very, very poor, did very poorly on that. Also, when it came to Obamacare, I think the back and forth where Donald had to pull out, I saw you melt down at Chris Christie. That's desperation, I think, because Rubio had a clear picture for how to reform Obamacare, repeal it, replace it, and Trump basically talked about, getting rid of the state lines, and that's all he said over and over. So Rubio was strong. As far as Kasich, what turned me off about Kasich was when I saw him at a luncheon once and not too long ago when he said about the gay marriage decision, let's move on. Well, he said that again tonight. He can't be anybody's vice president. He's never going to be the Republican Party's presidential nominee either. And I just think, he's wasting time by being there.
Let me turn to a taxing question, Dick Morris, the whole tax returns issue. Here comes Mitt Romney, who we haven't heard of, going after Trump yesterday, saying, quote, there's something there. Apparently Mitt channeling the Republican form of Harry Reid. That was picked up tonight by Ted Cruz and to a certain degree by Marco Rubio and certainly by the questioners. Should everybody be putting out their tax returns tomorrow, or is there something to Donald's claim that, hey, I'm being audited, I can't put those out right now?
It's absurd. Anyone who's audited can release their tax returns. It's ridiculous to say that you can't do it. It's fabricated out of whole cloth. And by the way, his assertion that he's being audited for 4 or 5 or 6 years and can't release any back year, the IRS is legally prohibited from auditing more than 3 years at a time. So there's nothing to stop him from releasing his 10, 11, or 12 returns, or 9. This is because tomorrow all the tax experts are going to weigh in and talk about how crazy it is to say you can't release your returns because you're being audited. It's like a new exception. I can't talk about this because the case is before the court. Nonsense.
But again, Mike, we talked about the one-liners Donald would have. There was a picture he released that was worth 1,000 one-liners where he was signing a tax return, and there was a stack of documents within that return looked to be 3 feet high. Does Donald have an argument that, hey, I'm a businessman, I've been successful, look at what the IRS has tried to do to me?
Yeah, I think all this talk about tax returns is ultimately nonsense because as we all know, every candidate has to put out a very detailed financial disclosure that really gives a person a much better picture of that particular candidate's financial status than a tax return does. Trump pointed that out. Tax returns are really, really great fodder for the insiders. The press loves to hammer people. Give up your tax returns. We have a right to see them. Truthfully, you don't have a right to see someone's tax returns. There's nothing in the law that requires candidates to give tax returns. You do have to give a sworn affidavit about your financial condition, and that's very thorough, and it requires extraordinary levels of reporting. Let me tell you what I think. If I'm a viewer out there, and I'm one of those guys at the carrier plant, I don't give a rip about Donald Trump's tax returns. I care about mine, and mine is going to show that I'm unemployed. And I'm going to care more about whether Donald Trump will help me get a job than whether Donald Trump made a lot of money or didn't pay a lot of taxes. And so I think candidates get themselves twisted into a pretzel when the fact is, if Donald Trump's smart, he probably will wait to release those tax returns after the 15th of March when this thing is well underway.